All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Ready, camera.
And
3,
cue talent.
2, 1.
Roll for record.
Greetings and thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making news. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining us from Dallas, Texas is PJTV contributor Scott Ott. And here in Los Angeles, a man with a red tie, stand-up comic Stephen Cruiser. Now it's time to go to the top of the rundown. And this morning we all got the memo. Red tie goes first. So we begin with Mr. Cruiser.
It's known as Fox News Standard, by the way. At the top of my rundown, the little majority that couldn't. Boehner follows McConnell and capitulates on executive amnesty funding. Is this the best we can hope for? The House voted on Tuesday to fund the Department of Homeland Security through the end of the budget year. President Obama has said he would sign the legislation. Republicans hope to use the bill to reverse Obama's executive action on immigration. Boehner dropped those demands. Now, John, the whole theory behind doing this is so they don't get beaten up in the press, so they don't get the negative press. Yesterday, it was nothing about Boehner caving. This is all in the lefty press, the left blogs. Boehner caves. He needs Pelosi. Boehner can't function without Pelosi. The week before, it was, is Harry Reid really the Senate majority leader still? And so they're getting savaged anyway. So why, not why, we know why they're doing this though, but at some point, do you have any hope for them reversing course on this, or do you think they're just going to keep going along? Because this didn't just, try to avoid the press. This kind of fast-tracked the amnesty funding too, which is a big deal and a bad deal.
Well, Congress never speaks with one voice. You have 535 members and you have 535 different opinions on what should be done. Leadership can try their best to keep their coalition together and get everyone on the same page, but the Republican Party really is split on this issue. And this is why it's so important to get a nominee who is a hawk on the border. Mm-hmm. And from my perspective, Scott Walker stands out as the most hawkish on this particular issue. Jeb Bush is in line with the pro-amnesty crowd. Chris Christie is in line with the pro-amnesty crowd. Mike Huckabee is in line with the pro-amnesty crowd. Rick Santorum you could group in there. And Scott Walker should be exploiting this right now. The person who should be on cable news, on all the shows, beating the drum on this is the Wisconsin governor.
I said the other night on Twitter that with a Boehner-McConnell majority and Jeb in the White House, we would all be Spanish-speaking Canadians within a week. That's how bad it's going to be. Scott, I'm going to ask you to put on a little prognosticatory helmet here right now. It's difficult to replace a sitting House Speaker, but Boehner looks legitimately weakened right now. He can't get anything together to save his life. That's perfect. We know the rules. We know how arcane they are once in a while to try to unseat a sitting speaker. They've tried to make some moves before, but the problem has been they really haven't had anybody strong trying to do it. Do you see anyone on the horizon, new or old out there, who might make a run at the speakership?
Well, I tweeted this morning, hashtag House Minority Leader John Boehner. I really don't necessarily think that the Homeland Security bill, I can't even say the word Homeland. I still hate that. How many years later is it? Every time I say Homeland, I think I'm in Mother Russia or something. But anyway, I don't think that was the place, the mountain, the hill to die on. However, if you say you're going to die on that hill, die on it. And that's my problem with John Boehner. Don't talk tough before the election and say, oh, well, finally, if only we could have control of the House and control of the Senate, we'd teach that Mr. Obama what for, and then collapse at the earliest opportunity. And to pass a bill without a Republican majority in the House is egregious. How this guy can possibly hold on to his speakership, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole problem here, is that in order to avoid the negative press, they do, or avoid the backlash from the base, they do this little tease in the beginning, like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to fight for these provisions, we're going to fight for these provisions, when you can tell neither one of them had any intention of fighting for the provisions in the first place. So why not just go with the clean bill from the beginning? Yeah, if you're going to die on it, or don't bring it up at all, or don't even look at the Hill. Don't take pictures of it, don't put them on Instagram, avoid the Hill altogether.
Let me ask you this question, this big picture question, both of you here. Are you a fatalist on the border? Because the Republican Party, as I mentioned before, is split on the issue. The Democrats used to be split. The unions used to come down one way, the blacks used to come down one way, and then you had the pro-amnesty crowd on the other side. At one point, if you go back far enough, Cesar Chavez was against illegal immigration because he knew it undercut his farm workers. The Democratic Party is united in believing in open borders. The Republican Party is split. If you have a split Republican Party and a Democratic Party completely on board, how do you protect the border?
I think, sadly, this is one of those airline disaster scenarios where nobody gets serious about it until something bad really happens. I mean, until
we've had something bad happen. The Tsarnaevs.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. I mean, it's going to have to be something worse. Obviously, maybe we've been desensitized since 9/11 now, and it takes more than just that. I mean, it's just I really don't think the Democrats are going to be shaken out of this reverie, because what they don't pay attention to is the rest of the world, where these socialist countries all have really tight immigration policies because they don't want everybody coming in and getting the goodies. And they're not. These are kind of like the news socialists. They haven't figured that out yet.
Are you a fatalist, Scott?
No, I'm not a fatalist, but I think if you're going to be a society of laws, then the law has to mean something. Now, I'm okay if we're going to say, look, you know what? We're not going to have all these laws and quotas and things like that. We're going to be as open as we possibly can, welcome people as much as we can, and just do our best to keep diseases and criminals and terrorists out. That's okay, but don't say that you have a set of laws and a process and then have millions of people violating that law. It trashes the rule of law in your country, and that's the devastating thing about this.
Absolutely. All right, Scott, what do you have for us?
Well, speaking about trashing the rule of law, at the top of my rundown, perhaps the greatest military general of our generation just struck a plea deal with the Justice Department. It will not only allow him to avoid a lengthy and embarrassing trial about his disclosure of classified information to his mistress, but will likely keep him out of jail. The New York Times thinks David Petraeus will get 2 years probation and a $40,000 fine. The former general is now back in the private sector giving speeches and, as the kids say these days, making bank. This is clearly a slap on the wrist for the former CIA director who handed his classified private journal to his subordinate mistress, Army Reservist Paula Broadwell. Now, if this guy were a big liberal, the right would be all over him. But frankly, nobody is, including Eric Holder and Barack Obama. Is this kid glove treatment really about just salvaging an otherwise honorable military career? Or does Petraeus know stuff from his CIA days that guarantees him a soft landing forever? And didn't we raise these kinds of concerns about espionage and global blackmail during the Clinton-Lewinsky affair?
Well, how about when Dick Morris was on the phone with Bill Clinton talking about presidential matters, and he gave the phone to his hooker as she was sucking his toes? Remember that?
Yes.
That happened back in 1996.
Tried to block it, but thanks for bringing it back.
How's that visual? Yeah. And how about Hillary Clinton, for that matter, sending emails on an unsecure system so anyone and their mother, a mistress or not, could hack into her email system and find out what was going on. Now, it's interesting that
yeah, but John, we can't be blame shifting here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, this is about David Petraeus. What do you think of his situation?
No, it's all wrong. That's what I'm saying. I'm with you. Go back to the previous segment on the rule of law. Petraeus absolutely should be smacked down by the court. You cannot do this. National security means something. And if we're going to get willy-nilly with how we deal with this, and for that matter, I'll throw in Edward Snowden and I'll throw in Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning, whatever you want to call him. But for whatever reason, because so many people in this country have so many axes to grind with the government, or they're partisans above patriots, or whatever you want to call it, when it's your team, you look the other way. All of this stuff is serious. All of it. What Hillary did is serious. What Dick Morris did is serious. What General Petraeus did is serious. And what Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning did was treason. But for whatever reason, all these people have their fans. Why we have a cult of personality among politicians in this country, and we're so willing to defend them and excuse this type of behavior, is beyond me.
You're not the only one throwing
Cruiser, this is on the right, man. This is on the right. We are idolizing and lionizing this guy and essentially protecting him. But he, for all his heroism, he was fighting to defend a nation that lives on the rule of law.
Oh yeah, and what he did was, I mean, it's so tawdry that he gave the stuff to his mistress. I mean, that somehow makes it even worse. But I mean, you go back to what you said, you'd throw Edward Snowden in. The press already is. The press is saying, hey, if Petraeus got this deal, Snowden deserves a deal right now. Maybe not exactly a heads-up comparison, but definitely it invited that conversation already. And I agree, Scott's right. I think we're giving him a pass because on the right we idolize the military more than we should. There was this tortured semi-outraged thing in National Review Online where, okay, yes, he did wrong, but it's the Holder Justice Department's fault for giving the political class a free pass on things. And it was just painful to read. And I wouldn't say that as much as I dislike this administration, I wouldn't say that giving the political class a pass is unique to them. That's something the political class does for itself. So I think definitely there should be more outrage on this. I think national security is national security, and it doesn't matter if it was a low-level analyst violating it or the head of the CIA violating it. To what Scott asked about, does he know too many secrets to let it out? Who knows? But
if he didn't have the scandal, this man would probably be the Republican frontrunner right now.
Could be. Could be, yes.
All right, moving on to the top of my rundown. Despite rising approval ratings here in the Golden State, voters would rather pick Hillary Clinton over Governor Jerry Brown for president. That's a result of a new USC LA Times poll, which said that 49% of voters would choose Clinton, while only 26% would side with the four-term California governor. 26% were undecided. Brown is the most popular politician in the state. 2/3 of voters approve of the job he's doing. About 6 in 10 have a positive view of him. Is this a Democratic Party being ageist? The fact that this guy is probably the most popular Democratic governor in the country. He is someone who, unlike the Clintons, is a moral person. He's not been tied to any big scandals. And if you look at him on paper, he's a guy who should be in the running at a minimum to be their nominee. This guy is never mentioned, and even in California wouldn't win.
I think this is an example of the California Democratic electorate being just mindless sheep. Seriously, they're going with Hillary because she's the front runner. That's what they've read in the paper. That's how California Democrats vote. Jerry Brown's not only the most popular politician in this state right now. Given the number of offices he's held, you could make the case he's the most popular politician in this state ever. Okay, so I don't think it's ageism. I just think it's the electorate here is like, oh, that's who we're supposed to vote for. So that's who the press is telling us to vote for president. That's who we're going to vote for president.
You know, Scott, there are a lot of articles out there right now on the internet, including one in Politico, saying, what do the Democrats do if Hillary implodes or decides not to run for some reason? Who are the pool of people that will jump up and say, all right, I'll go ahead and run for the presidency? The pickings are, in fact, pretty slim if Hillary Clinton decides not to run or it gets involved too closely to a scandal to the point where she can't run. Am I right?
I'm not sure. And here's why. Because yesterday I saw a picture of Martin O'Malley in a cut-off T-shirt with an electric guitar in his hand. And at that point I said, there's the Democratic nominee. I mean, that's all you need. You seriously, I mean, we get all concerned about policies and ideology and principles and what they think of the Constitution and where they stand on issue after issue. And I really think the Democrats just want to feel good about how cool their nominee is, which is frankly why Hillary Clinton's going to have a rough road of it. She was cool a couple of years ago. She's no longer cool, and selling herself as everybody's favorite grandma, ain't going to fly.
You know what? Scott is absolutely right on this point. The Democrats buy into a storyline. You're the first black president. You're the first female president. You're the first baby boomer president. And if they don't have a storyline that they can buy into, they just do not care. John Kerry wasn't successful. Jimmy Carter wasn't successful running for re-election. Michael Dukakis. The ones that weren't able to put together that narrative that would just galvanize the Democratic base, they just went away into oblivion.
Which is precisely why the DNC just ordered Rosetta Stone Spanish for that guy from San Antonio so that he can learn to speak Spanish and be a little more authentic Latino nominee for them. That's the story they want in this. Because they're having a hard time crafting a story around O'Malley. He's having a hard time crafting a story for himself right now. I mean, it's like I wrote yesterday about the political piece you alluded to, is that, the Democratic bench is thinner than Joe Biden's hair before the plugs. It's just, there's not much there. There's Warren, there's O'Malley, and then there's
space. And Biden.
Deep space.
Biden could theoretically become their front runner.
Oh God, now you just gave me something to wish for Christmas.
Well, think about it. Elizabeth Warren. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, the Democrats are the only party that clears the field before they have one.
That's true. But Elizabeth Warren doesn't keep that Clinton and Obama coalition together. That's a coalition that's consisting of left-wing activist types and Wall Street and corporate benefactors. Elizabeth Warren doesn't have the Wall Street corporate benefactors on her side like Hillary Clinton does.
That's true.
They'd have to go somewhere.
She has said a few negative things about them.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to leave your comments in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruz, and joining me here in Los Angeles, and Scott Ott in Dallas, Texas. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.